Okay, so we are live. We're a couple minutes early, so I'm just going to try to talk slower. And this is very hard as an ADHDer to talk slowly and clearly, but I'm going to try because I do want to wait so that more people arrive. I know a lot of people actually booked this session because everybody is so excited to hear from you.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I'm going to do an intro now, but I just want to tell you that I am so happy you and I are on the same time zone
Mm.
because this gave me the opportunity to interview you, Lou, because everybody wanted to, like the people in America, Val, our team in Australia. And I was like, well, I'm the same time zone, so I'm going to do the interview. So that's why I was the lucky one. So I'm going to start in a minute. I just want to make sure that everybody's got a cup of tea wherever you are, or a glass of water or coffee. I don't know where everyone is joining from. And then I will be starting with the admin side of things, or maybe just do an intro and then do some of the admin. So just for everybody out there, my name is Carla Pretorius, and I'm a PhD researcher. I'm also a registered psychotherapist, and I've got ADHD myself. I'm the clinical lead for Caboose, um, which is an inclusive and safe online community for neurodivergent people to connect, learn, and find purpose. I am thrilled to introduce you to us, Lou, but I'm going to postpone for one more second. I'm so sorry. It's like postponing. So Caboose is built by neurodivergent individuals for neurodivergent individuals. I'm just going to give a quick reminder to everybody that is here that the divergent discussions, or the DDs, is being recorded and we'll be sending out a copy to everyone. So don't stress if you've missed anything, you will be receiving a copy. We'll also have time at the end for the audience to ask any questions. So you can add your questions. I'm just going to open the chat here to see. And you can ask any questions. I just went American there. You can ask any questions there, and then I will get to the questions at the end. Okay, now I'm going to do your introduction. So, Lou is an award-winning speaker and creator as the force behind the platform at neurodivergent_Lou. You've become a trusted voice on autism with an audience over 400,000, I think it's 419,000 the last time I saw, followers, and a monthly reach of more than 3 million people, which is astonishing and it's so needed. Drawing on your own lived experiences, Lou delivers powerful, compassionate, and empowering insights that resonates with the global community. Her work shares the everyday realities of being autistic in a non-autistic world. That's so true. Offering understanding and practical tools for thriving. Lou, your content has had a life-changing impact on countless people, with followers describing your work as genuinely transformative. So I'm exceptionally excited to meet you and to be here with you. Thank you so much for making time to speak with us,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for having me. It's so exciting to be here. I always love having conversations with fellow neurodivergents. So, yeah, really looking forward to this.
That's awesome. And we said this before we started the recording, but I've got ADHD and Lou's autistic. So I told her, look, if I do interrupt you, I'm so sorry. And she said, look, I might do the same. So we're going to try and navigate through this, but there's no judgment from either of us. So that's always a fun way to start a conversation. I want to ask you, I want to jump in immediately because it's such an important topic for, I think, most neurodivergent individuals. And especially in my practice, I hear this quite often. How do I make friends? How do I sustain friendships? So the first question is that I'm going to ask you is, when did you first notice that your way of making friends and sustaining friends felt different, or did it even feel different, do you think, from others?
Yeah, so for me, it was from a very young age. I knew that I was different, and I don't think for a very long time I had that language to understand kind of what that difference was. So I can remember being about 4 or 5 and kind of going into the playground and watching everybody else socializing and interacting, and it almost feeling like I was watching everyone through a window because everybody else knew, it felt like, exactly kind of how to interact with each other, how to communicate, how to like the same topics, how to be kind of in that social interaction space. And for me, I always just felt like I didn't know either end, like how to start a conversation, and how to kind of interact with those groups. I always describe kind of being autistic as feeling like everybody else has this secret rule book and you just don't have it. And that was very much how I felt from a really young age. I really wanted to almost be able to jump into those conversations, to be able to have kind of what felt like that magical kind of friendship experience. But from when I first started school, I was aware that I kind of struggled with making friends. And I think it was a huge sense of like isolation and loneliness as well, in the sense of I can see everybody else interacting. I'm desperate for that friendship, but I don't necessarily know how to have that friendship. So that was kind of when I first sort of started to notice that actually there was something different about how I interacted and how my struggle to kind of make friends, definitely.
So that was a really young age, eh? So around 4 or 5, you already noticed that something felt different in you.
Yeah, I'm always surprised as well, like just how early that we start to notice our differences as autistic people. I think sometimes there's an assumption that autistic people don't know that we're different, but for me, my experience was I knew that I was different from that very young age, and I knew that even like friendships and things were really difficult and kind of different for me. And that did sort of intensify as I got older, but that was like the first kind of snapshot of being in that sort of school playground and knowing actually there's something different and there's something that I struggle with around interaction and friendships.
That's so interesting to me because just from an ADHD lens, I never knew that I was different in that sense. I can look back
Mm.
now and I can even spot my anxiety. Like I would always try and fit in and or be funny or say something. Now I can see that's masking and
Mhm.
anxiety. But back then I was just thinking, oh, this is what it takes. Like it takes a lot of energy to be friends and make friends, and everybody goes through that. So that's very interesting that you kind of spotted that from a young age, and it's good to know because I think a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, so I knew this from a young age, and that's a normal experience to go through.
Yeah, and like what you were saying, it makes me think like for me that my struggle that I didn't realize I had was sensory issues. Like I
Mm.
didn't, because I'd never experienced the world as somebody else, I didn't know that not everyone else could hear electricity or things like that. And for
Oh.
other autistic people, I have heard other autistic people say I didn't know that I interacted differently. So I do think there is, it kind of highlights just how varied kind of neurodivergence is and how different many different people's experiences, definitely.
Yeah, I was speaking to a friend of mine, Stephanie Bethany. She's also autistic,
Mm,
and she was saying that very much later in her life, she realized that her experience is so completely different, and that people don't experience the world as intensely sensory wise as her. And she always just thought that she's doing something wrong because
mm.
everybody can handle that amount of noise. Okay, so here we go, and I'm already drifting off topic. So I want to ask you now, just leading from that question, like some common myths or assumptions that people have about autistic people and friendships that you like to challenge. Are there any?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I had about my, like, it was almost an assumption I had about myself was that I'm too much as a friend. And I think a lot of autistic people struggle with the sense that we are too much or we are not enough to be friends with in some kind of way. I think I often struggled with being told that I was too sensitive, or I was too much, or I was too blunt, or all the different things that we might be told as autistic people because of our differences. For me, I really internalized that, and it got to the point where I thought, well, I can't have friends because I just don't seem to be right for anyone. I seem to be too much or not enough, or all those different things that we're told. And I think for autistic people, often we do tend to have those kind of negative experiences of friendships and relationships from a young age. The feeling of being sort of outcast or isolated or struggling with bullying. A lot of autistic people struggle with all of those things. And I think sometimes those assumptions can come actually from ourselves as well as from other people, in the sense of feeling too much or not enough. And I think for me, it's only been recently where I've been able to sort of say to myself, actually, if I'm too much for other people, then it's their responsibility to go and find less. It's not my responsibility
Right.
to make myself smaller. And I think that kind of almost shift in my own mindset around it, in terms of the things that are my autistic traits and the things that are part of how I express joy, for example. I tend to be quite intense with my interests, and I get very excited over things, and all of those things that actually I felt were too much, which were just part of being autistic. I think I've learned that they're just me being me, and they're things that I can embrace. So I think that has definitely been almost an assumption that I've had. Another massive one that I hear is autistic people don't want friends, or
Yeah.
if you're autistic, you can't have friends. A lot of those kind of assumptions. And for me, I think the biggest things that help me is the friendships that I have. It makes a massive difference to my life, and I don't think I could do life without the people that I have in it. Um,
Mm.
I think,
That's beautiful.
yeah, I think it's just so important that autistic people know that we are worthy of friendships, and because we're autistic, we can also have those friendships. Yeah, so that's a key
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, definitely. I love both of those. And I love the fact that you also said that you want those friendships and you need those friendships. I think it's really important to choose wisely. We were talking a little bit earlier about the amount of friends. And I think when I was younger, I thought the more the better, because that's what
Mm.
I saw in society. So I kind of collected friends, and now when now I know myself a lot more, and I know how draining it is to be social, and that I do need to kind of decompress after any social event. Even after this, I'm gonna need to be quiet for an hour after this. And I think that that is good to know as a neurodivergent individual, because then we can kind of say, okay, maybe I need less or fewer good friends. I don't know if you agree with that, to kind of do like a roundup of your friends and see if they're taking a lot of your energy, and if you need all of those friends sometimes or need more.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that I think is really important is knowing that you can have different friends for different things.
Mm,
Sometimes I would be quite intense in my friendships and have like one person that I became really kind of really strong, intense friendship with. And actually, I think it is okay to say actually different people need different amounts of friends, but also that you can have different friends for different things. I know
yeah.
sometimes, like with ADHD in particular, there might be that need to kind of seek novelty and to seek kind of change to keep it kind of interesting, for brains. And then I think having kind of that chance to stop, take your friendships and think, actually, how is this working for me? Is there anything else I kind of need? I think can be really important and really useful.
Yeah, I love that. And also just to kind of see like your the amount of time that you spend with friends, and you don't need to spend that much time actually with all your friends, and also to choose friends that are maybe either neurodivergent themselves or at least open to learning about our traits. I do find that quite useful. That actually leads me to my next question. What does friendship look like or feel like for you personally? How has that evolved over time as well?
Yeah, I think at the moment for me, I have a group chat of other neurodivergent people who I am friends with and who kind of play a massive part in my life. And it wasn't necessarily, if I was asked when I was like 15 years old, what does friendship look like? it wouldn't be what I have now, because I don't see these people in real life particularly regularly. Like, they're based all around kind of the country, so it makes it a bit more challenging. I talk to them quite regularly, but that doesn't mean phoning all the time for hours. For me, it's often just this made me think of you. Here's like a video that I saw. Here's something related to your special interest that I saw that made me think of you. Here's something that I think is really interesting. Those kind of little micro interactions that
Mm.
happen, and I think they play a massive part in my life, and I genuinely don't know what I'd do without the kind of group chat that lives in my phone of neurodivergent people who just understand the experiences. Like, the other day I was saying about how, like, I'm getting massive sensory issues from the sun and the hot weather, and everyone was like, yes, we get it. Like, have you tried putting an ice back in the freezer, like, and then putting it like in a hot water bottle? And I had like 500 solutions to my sensory issues in the hot weather. And I was just thinking, like, this is what friendship looks like for me, and this is like an incredible kind of interaction, and this is really important. And it maybe wasn't what other people might consider like what a friendship group looks like necessarily, but it has played, yeah, a huge role in terms of feeling comfortable to be myself as well.
Mm.
I think the time when I struggled most with friendships was in the teenage years, just because of how complicated social interactions became.
Mm.
I think, being autistic already, the social rules and the hidden social rules feel so challenging. But when you're 15 and suddenly you've got to keep track of who likes who doesn't like who's talking about what behind who else's back, so
Mm.
much of that becomes a lot more complicated. And it becomes really cool to not care very much about things and people at that age, I think. And
Mm.
I just couldn't do that. I just found that so hard. So I often found myself like quite isolated. And at like break times, I didn't want people to know that I was isolated. So I'd walk around pretending to look for my friends, but I didn't actually kind of have friends or people to sit with at times. So yeah, it was a real kind of a challenge because I just felt so different. And it's being able to look back on that now and think, actually, there wasn't anything wrong with me. I was just in the wrong environment with the wrong people.
Mm.
So I think that's been massive. That being able to look back with that kind of realization, I think, is so important. Um, yeah.
Yeah. That's also, you know, what you were talking about earlier about I think that even have a word for it. It's called pebbling,
Oh
pebble,
yes.
something like where you give like little, you send like a meme to this person, or you send like a little, this made me think of you, like a photo to that person. And because neurodivergent people are so focused on details, it's so easy for us to say, even if it's a rock, like sometimes I'll just send a rock that's heart shaped to my mom. And I was like, oh, this reminded me of you, and it means so much to those individuals that know that we're thinking of them. You know, it's better than a big present, I think. I just want to make sure that the sound and everything is good, because we did get some people saying that the video is a little bit blurry. We will be sending a recording. I mentioned this earlier, but sorry, I wasn't checking the chat. But we will send a recording to everyone, and the video will be better on that side, I think, then. But for now, I know the sound is good, so I hope that that's okay. But otherwise, you will get the recording too. There are a lot of questions already, so let's get through our questions so that we can get to the questions from the audience. Are there any traits of autism, like needing time alone, sensory sensitivities? I know you touched on already, and the honesty, right, the directness that you found that could affect your friendships for better or for worse. You kind of touched on this, but are there any traits specifically with autism that you would say?
Yeah, for me, I think the exhaustion one is massive. Like, I didn't realize just how much energy I was using in social
Mm.
interactions, particularly at the times in my life where I was masking, like hiding my autistic traits or mimicking how non-autistic people were acting, to kind of try and fit in. I often found that I was using just so much energy because I would kind of try and like make eye contact even though it was painful, or I would try and copy what other people were saying and the interests that they had so that I'd seem like I fitted in. I was using energy kind of even things like making my voice go up and down in a certain way so that I'd sound like other people. All of those different
Mm,
ways I was kind of masking my autistic traits were absolutely exhausting. It's like
mm,
just constantly I felt like being held under a magnifying glass in the sense that
mm,
I was, yeah, really conscious of how I was acting. And then I just have to sleep after school, like for like hours afterwards, because it was just absolutely
mm,
exhausting. And even now, I find like it absolutely exhausting to kind of interact with people. And I think I kind of have almost buffers now, so I know that if I am going to have a big social interaction or even a small one, I will have like time to just sit by myself and decompress so that I have
mm,
that time, and building in alone time I think is absolutely key in terms of friendships. And being able to communicate that as well. I think I
mm,
now am really quite open with people and say, like, I love spending time with you, but I find that I get really exhausted really easily. I find it helpful to know roughly what time we're going to end so that I can factor in kind of that alone time. And sometimes the other person is like, yeah, me too. I'm going to go home and watch TV and snuggle under a blanket because I find social interactions exhausting as well. Like, the more open
yeah.
I've been with people, the more I've realised actually other people have kind of their own needs and their own experiences, even who aren't autistic,
Mm.
which is absolutely, yeah, really helped in my friendships.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think the buffering is great, like the, buffering in between social events, but also what I've realized is that I put in these parameters or I time box my social events.
Mm.
So I have something on Friday, which I'm already anxious about because I don't know these people, right? So I'm like, oh, like how many people are going to be there? I didn't ask. Like, I don't want to be that person. Like, how many people did you invite to your house, But I said to them, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna have some boundaries so
Mm.
that it's on me if I want to change that. So I said, look, I have a lot of work to do, which I always do. I will probably only join for 2 hours, a couple of hours. And now I know, okay, it's 2 hours. I can do that. I can take breaks in between. And then if I want to take it longer, if I actually want to go for dinner and I feel comfortable with the people, then I will. But I think it's good that we know that this about ourselves, that these things do drain us.
Yeah, absolutely. Those boundaries I think are so key.
Okay, I've got two questions for you. That's kind of the same trend. Sometimes meaningful connections to neurotypical people can means that we have to constant message. Is that the same for neurodivergent people? And then follow-up question, what strategies have helped you make meaningful connections with others and explain these differences, please? Sorry, lots of questions there.
Yeah, so I think for me, like in terms of the constant messaging, I find that I don't necessarily constantly message, particularly like the small talk stuff. I really struggle with like the backwards and forwards of hi, how are you?
Mm,
Like, what are you doing today? I tend to get straight into what I want to talk about or what the other person wants to talk about. And I find getting into that kind of conversation helps rather than backwards and forwards of messaging. Um, I also find that I find like the pebbling, kind of the sending of like things that remind me of that person
mm,
really helps in terms of then people know that I'm thinking of them without having to do that backwards and forwards
mm,
messaging, which I find takes a lot of like social energy. There's quite a lot of thinking through things and processing of the kind of different messages and the social scripts of like trying to work out if what the social script is. So yeah, I do find that having like different ways to kind of connect with people is really important for me. And I also I also find that just being open with people, like I might say that I don't necessarily message backwards and forwards, and that doesn't mean that I don't care about you. I just struggle to do that.
mm,
I think that is absolutely important to say
yeah.
as well.
I wonder there, I just want to do another follow-up question there because I was at a dinner, maybe this was like maybe a couple of months ago already, and it's still bothering me where I would disclose that I have ADHD and a person that I don't know, so it's a friend of a friend, would say, "Oh yeah, we all have a bit of ADHD. I also lose my keys," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's not it. Like, you don't know what anxiety comes with losing stuff and the overthinking and the spiraling and da da da." And I find it exhausting to constantly have to prove my diagnosis, even though I have it formally, which I should just print and send to them. But what do you think? What is a good way to kind of determine if this friend is going to be somebody that we have to constantly, I don't know, not kind of you don't have to, what's the word? I just hit a blank there. You don't have to convince, sorry, a friend to convince that you're autistic or that you have ADHD or that you're an ADHD. Is that a friend that we should pursue, or is it somebody that we should just say, you know what, that's a good filter to say that's probably not my tribe?
Yeah, so for me, I absolutely 100% get, yeah, that reaction too. I have
Mm,
found, like, if it's somebody that I'm just going to meet once, then I find that it's not really going to be
not
like,
worth it.
yeah, I just find like I will sometimes disclose my needs without necessarily saying that I'm autistic. So I'll say, like, oh, I really struggle with bright lights, I get overwhelmed by them, or something like that. And then I won't necessarily feel that like pressure to then have to educate that person or explain to them kind of that conversation. So I found that works quite well. And then with other people, sometimes I will go on and have that conversation of like, yes, everybody might lose their keys once, but they're not kind of losing their keys every single day to the point that is impacting how they're living their life and like those struggles. Like I think one of the yeah, I think it can be really helpful. I think one analogy that I've heard people say is that everybody sometimes gets like um sick, but it doesn't mean that they've got morning sickness and they're pregnant. Like you can't be a bit pregnant and you can't be a bit
Mm,
autistic either. Like that kind of analogy I think has sometimes worked in the past in terms of explaining to people actually you can't be a little bit pregnant, you can't be a little bit
mm,
autistic. Everybody might get sick, it doesn't mean they've got morning sickness and they're pregnant. Those kind of analogies sometimes work quite well
mm.
as well.
Yeah, I saw one of your posts that was awesome. I think it was like 9 or 7 ways to disclose without disclosing your
Yeah.
diagnosis. And it was just like hitting those symptoms or characteristics. I don't like the word symptoms, but characteristics of like, I get overwhelmed with loud noises.
Mm.
Or one of them was it feels like something about the sensory. It feels like it's hurting my eyes or something like that that you said.
Yeah, yeah, like it's overwhelming or it yeah hurts my eyes or those kind of
Yeah.
things without kind of saying, but being able to disclose your needs.
Yeah, I think it's great because then it's like, oh, okay, so let's go to a quieter area and we don't fight the diagnosis. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, okay. Okay, so how do you navigate moments when friendships start to feel one-sided or emotionally draining? What would you say there?
Yeah, so I think a big part of that for me has been first of all having that conversation with that person. I think maybe it's my like being quite blunt. I will say like is there anything that I can do to help you? I've noticed that things are maybe a bit different to how they were before. Are you okay? And maybe extend that offer of like support because I know for me, like some of my friends might withdraw when they're struggling. So being able to, and sometimes people have said, yes, I'm struggling. I need a bit of time, and then I know what's happening, and everybody knows, and I can support as well. I think if it's not necessarily that situation, it's more of a one-sided kind of you're putting in a lot of effort into that interaction and it's not being reciprocated. I think it's okay to then kind of realize, okay, I'm going to sort of distance myself and let that person distance themselves. I think as well it kind of comes back to having different friends for different things. I know for example I've sometimes put loads of effort into a friendship because I've assumed that actually like I've assumed that maybe the friendship is more than it is, and then actually having that time to realize okay this person is the type of friend that we just go for coffee with occasionally, and that's really lovely when we do that, but the friendship isn't anything kind of more than that. It's not a best friend, it's not a someone that I will necessarily rely on when I'm struggling, but having that, I can still have that interaction and still have those nice times and recognize that actually that is the sort of boundary I've got with that person. I think really
Mhm.
helped me with navigating those friendships.
Yeah, I really like what you're talking about with the tiers of friendship. So
Mm.
understanding, okay, these are and making it clear for your for like a pros and cons list, really, like every person in your life saying, okay, well, this person is really good to have coffees with. This person loved the same interest as me, so I can do, I can go to some, like if it's a movie or something with them, or I can play games with these ones. And online friendships is also one of my go-tos because there's I don't need to have a mask on at all if we don't go into public. So that's great. I'm just cautious of the time, so I want to get through a few more questions, and we've got such brilliant questions here in the chat, so I want to get to that too. Do you have any advice for autistic people who struggle with reading social cues or worry about saying, in brackets, the wrong thing?
Yeah, I think for me, that used to be something I really struggled with. And one reframe that I think really helped is realizing that actually it's not entirely my responsibility. It's responsibility of both people in an interaction to get the message across. So if something has been misunderstood in an interaction, then that isn't entirely on me. That's on the other person as well. And that's about both of us kind of working out how we can kind of understand each other. And another part of that that I really struggled with as well is like going over in my head, like when I was going to sleep, like going over, did I say the right thing? Could that have been
Mhm.
misinterpreted? Is that person upset with me? Because sometimes people do get upset and we don't realize. But I think one of the things that I find really helpful is saying to people, actually, if I've upset you, please just tell me. And
Mhm.
then until I've got that person telling me that they're upset, then just assuming that everything's fine, because if they haven't
Mm.
told me, then it's okay. So I think that really helps in terms of worrying about upsetting people or that I have said the wrong thing. Um,
Mm.
and actually asking people to be really clear and to clarify their kind of social cues as well.
Yeah, I love that. Like also saying that it's not just your responsibility. And like when we think about these things, and I have those spiraling thoughts a lot, very often, where I'm like, oh, I hope this client didn't think that I meant this or that. But it's also our intentions are pure, and we're saying something to help most of the time, or to share, or to support, or like whatever is our role in that situation. But for me with clients, I will often say, look, if my advice or suggestions come across a little bit too direct, please just, you can always tell me, because this is what we're here for, to learn from each other. But I love that it's the other person's responsibility, even if they're a client of yours. But if they're a friend, definitely. And I
Yeah.
think it's a nice filter, right? To say, if somebody is taking what you're saying constantly personally, it's probably not a good friend. I don't think that's good. That's a good option for a close friend, because you're constantly going to have to explain, which is exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about the right fit of friendships as well, isn't it? Like we often talk about the right fit, and if actually like somebody's kind of, I know sometimes people like almost deliberately take things out of context, or I know like at
Mhm.
school a lot of autistic people like experience bullying where things are just completely taken out of context, or their words are kind of mixed up and things like that. And I think yeah, it's like recognizing when that's happening as well, definitely.
Mm. I think just on the other side there, because some of my autistic friends would say that they try to get clarity when they're talking to maybe more of an holistic individual, or somebody that's just says stuff, and they would ask, especially for ADHDers, I think they would say, "But what did you mean when you said that?" And an autistic person might ask that, and it's not because they're baiting you, it's because they really want to understand. I think that's also that's like from on the flip side of that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes it's like the need for clarity, and like that
Yeah.
need for clarity was also misunderstood as well. definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's actually a communication style, like a neuro-affirming communication style is the need for clarity. And yeah, sometimes a bit of rigidity with the words and the semantics of how words are supposed to be used. But yeah, that's how we learn. We just ask and we stay curious. Okay, how do you handle conflict in friendships, especially when emotional regulation is tricky for one or both people involved? How would you
Yeah, so I
do
think
that?
for me it's like recognizing like actually what's happened in terms of with the conflict. I think sometimes so often things can be like a misunderstanding or something has been taken out of context or something's been said that actually the other person didn't mean. I think but being able to explain actually what has happened has upset me, I think is really important because sometimes the other person might genuinely not know. So having being able to have that conversation, speaking to people really kind of openly about it. I think there's ways of doing it that's like quite gentle, but also quite direct and like kind. And I think having those conversations is really important. And in terms of that like emotional regulation thing, I think a lot of neurodivergent people struggle in terms of actually their like something will happen and then we'll really struggle and begin to kind of spiral about everything. Like perhaps it's kind of thinking everybody hates me, everything's going wrong, I can't cope, all of those kind of thought spirals that we might have kind of in response to that sort of interaction. I think being able to take like time away from a situation or a conflict and being able to sort of regulate ourselves, that might be like having just 5 minutes away, it might be sitting
Mm,
with a sensory toy and just sitting there and kind of regulating in that way. It might be like I
mm,
have a list of like things that like my friends have said that they've liked about me in the past, and I have that list to like read over to remind myself when I struggle with like friendships or things in general that actually people do like me and there are things about me that are good. Because I think it can be really hard to remember, particularly in
yeah.
times of conflict. So having like a list on your phone of the things that people have said that in the past about you that have been nice,
Yeah.
all of those kind of
That's
things.
That's such a nice suggestion. Even creating like a little SOS
Mm,
box where you can go back into when you're feeling calm, you can create that so that when you're feeling overwhelmed and you need a bit of connection or you just need like go into survival mode and you just need safety, then you can go into that. Mine is definitely playing with my dog. I mean, you can't see him now, he's sleeping here, but that would be one of my go to strategies. I'm like, okay, nothing is going to break. I need to just step away from this spiral and just play with my dog, which he's always happy to go and play or go for a walk or something. Um, Another thing which I was actually going to focus on with my PhD, which has changed now slightly, but is to distract ourselves. So we use some of our characteristics, especially as ADHDers or ADHDers, but also autistic individuals that can actually go into that like hyperfixation, and we can distract ourselves with something nice that's a bit more overwhelming than the emotion. So it could be something like a transcendent emotion that we elicit. So something like, awe, where you look at like planets and the NASA website and or something that's like really overwhelming and beautiful, or kamamuta, which is another emotion that we can elicit, which is basically watching puppy videos, but something that distracts us from that overwhelm, and then we can kind of go back to it when we're feeling calmer. So I really like that idea that you also said, writing a list out of what people like about you. That's awesome. um I wanted to ask you three more questions. Okay, so how do you support your adolescent, if it's a child,
mhm.
an adolescent, understanding the true meaning of friendship so they're not taken advantage of? And I think you touched on that with the school and the bullying, but how do we do that as parents?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is having conversations about like friendships in general from quite an early age. I think my parents did this with me. We'd read like a lot of books about friendships, a lot of books about like different scenarios in friendships, and I found that really helpful in terms of it not feeling too confronting. Because if my mum said, "Right now we're going to sit down and talk about friendships," I think I'd be like, "No." But I
Mhm.
think books and like films can be a way in to like learn about these things. And as an autistic person, I know like I learn a lot by like watching and like thinking about things. So that really works for me. I think as well, like being able to model like those friendships in your own lives as a parent or as someone who's close to a young person, being able to kind of model those friendships and actually being able to kind of talk about maybe the boundaries that you have in a friendship, the things like, actually, I'm really exhausted tonight, so I can't go for 4 hours going out, so I'm just going to go out for 1 hour, or those kind of situations that come up. I think being able to talk those through in like quite a gentle way can be really helpful. And also recognizing those signs that maybe a friendship isn't going so well, and being able to pick up on that. And I think sometimes, like I know for me, like my mum has asked me like how does that friendship feel, or those kind of questions that can really help you to identify if something isn't quite comfortable as well.
I really like that, staying curious with your child, and also the co-regulation, which I think a lot of times we feel, well, especially when I grew up, I think my parents probably, I'm just assuming now, but maybe they felt like if they said to me they're going through a rough time, that it's not a sign of strength, which
Mm.
is the opposite. Is actually showing that you are strong because you're so in touch with your emotions. And I think nowadays parenting is becoming a lot more inclusive of co-regulation, where they show their child, okay, this is what I do when I'm feeling
Mm.
overwhelmed, maybe we can do it together. And also comparing their friendships with the child's friendships. Like, this friend I got for coffee with only once a month because she talks a lot and she's got ADHD and name's Carla. And then this friend I see quite often because we work together, we have the same interests. So kind of like making those um, parallels, I think, could help a lot for kids. Okay, before I talk too much now, how has finding a neurodivergent community impacted the way that you view or value friendships? It's a nice
Yeah,
question.
I think being involved in the neurodivergent community like genuinely had a massive impact on my friendships and myself generally. I think for a long time I thought that I wasn't expressing friendship, or I wasn't expressing like love, and the care that I feel. I felt that I wasn't very good at expressing it, or I wasn't expressing it in the right way. So, for example, the things like the I would like share a story that I thought, like, if someone shared like a experience with me, I'd kind of share an experience back, like a relatable
Mm-hmm.
experience that they to what they were saying about. And I think sometimes that would be interpreted as being selfish or making it all about me, when actually that was like the way that I'd connect with that person, so that I would want them to know that they weren't alone, and sharing that story would be kind of the way of doing that. And actually being around neurodivergent people, who also might do that, or understand kind of where that comes from, I think is massive in terms of realizing that actually I do like have friendships and I do really care about people. So I think that was massive. And also that sense of belonging. For a long time, I didn't feel that I belonged anywhere. I found it really hard to find people that I could be myself around, and where I could kind of take off that mask a bit in terms of not feeling that I have to be somebody else, and having that kind of acceptance of myself, I think, was really important in terms of being part of the neurodivergent community as well.
Yeah, it's exhausting
Mm.
to constantly need to kind of adapt and camouflage and see what other people are doing. And it's so nice just to be myself. I mean, I'm 40 already, so it took me quite a few years to get here. But yeah, it takes a while to understand and to really love who we are and be okay with that person. The story swapping that you're talking about, that's actually when we really care about the person. Then
Mm.
we story swap. The one client of mine, he said it's story swapping versus one upping. It's very different. We're not trying to one up. We're actually trying to story swap to connect, which I
Exactly.
really like. Yeah, I like the way that my clients explain it to me sometimes. Okay, last question from me, and then I promise we're going to the audience. And I'm actually keeping really good time, by the way, for the first time in my life, probably, touch wood. because 1:45 we need to go to the audience. So I'm like super impressed with myself. Usually it's rocks, like one of the caboose people like sending me messages, Carla, you have 5 minutes, Carla, stop talking, Carla. It's 4 a.m. for her, so she can't be here. So I'm trying to navigate this by myself. Thanks for being so brilliant, by the way, Lou, because I do talk too much. Okay, so last question from my side. What would you say to someone who feels like they've always struggled to keep friends and is losing hope? And I think that's some of the questions that we're also receiving in the group chat.
By the way, I love the chat. I'm always here for the chat.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, no, I definitely think like my big message is that you aren't alone. I think when we are experiencing that sense of isolation and that like struggle, I think it can feel really lonely and really isolating. And the first thing I'd say is, although other people might seem like they have loads of friends or lots of like they're always going out, they're always doing things with other people, I think often there is that kind of loneliness, and lots of people really struggle with being lonely. So I'd say that, and I also think I think it's really important to remember that actually we can be by ourselves as well, and having that point where you're comfortable by yourself and where you're comfortable in yourself, and you maybe necessarily don't need to constantly be surrounded by people. I know at times like there has been times where I've really struggled with friendship and actually being comfortable, and like being comfortable in myself and being comfortable to do things on my own, like going out, taking myself for coffee or going for walks by myself and doing all those things. I think really helped in terms of not feeling as isolated. There's actually like confidence in being able to kind of be with yourself. And I would say like finding the neurodivergent community and finding other people who kind of share interests has been massive for me. A lot of my friendships don't necessarily come out of like small talk or things like that. It's always like getting straight in there, talking about interests and having those shared interests with people, and that maybe shared experience of being neurodivergent has massively helped. So I'd always say kind of if you can try and kind of interact with other people, and it can be online or it might be in person or whatever that kind of looks like. That isn't one way to have friends as well. Like I know sometimes people feel that the online community isn't friendship, but I think actually that is so key for us as neurodivergent people. Being online and having these friendships can be as important, if not more so, than the kind of people that we might see in real life as well. So not judging our own friendships, I think, is key.
That's so true. One. I think I have three. Three of my best friends are people that I've never met in
Mm.
person. Um, I would say my best friend lives in Germany, and I've never met her in real life. She's an autism advocate, and we've just started being friends about 8 years ago, and we talk almost every day, and it's really close. It's a close friendship, like talk, right? But yes, definitely. I was going to add something there, but I don't want to go over time. Look at it. It's 1:45. So let's go to the audience questions. We have so many here. I just want to get to one of the first questions was, um, I thought I'd found my people over the last year, but recently broke my wrist, and I soon noticed that some of those I thought were there or would check in really haven't. Friendships are hard. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your wrist. I hope you're feeling better and it's getting. Wait, was this last year? I hope it's better now. Hopefully, but this is a good question because I mean, this is story swapping, Vicky. I promise you, I'm not one upping, but I was dumped. I said to you, I'm not going to use this, but now I'm bringing it in. I was dumped from my relationship maybe like almost a month ago now. And I also thought I would get more people checking in. And that's hard because we give so much to our friendships, right? So, how do we navigate that? I'm going to give it to you, Lou, because I don't know the answer here.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I know that I really sometimes do struggle when I'm like, okay, I'm struggling, and actually I haven't necessarily heard from other people. I think sometimes recognizing that people don't kind of know what to say or what to do, or they think that we will reach out if we need them. I think that is a big one. Like, sometimes I know like friends have said, oh, I assumed that you'd reach out if you needed something, or I said that I'm always around, but they didn't necessarily check in. So I think there is sometimes
Mm,
that kind of mismatch of like people not necessarily understanding what we need and us maybe not understanding how they're expressing kind of things. Um, so I think that can be a big sort of
mm,
part of it. I also think it's okay to say as well to other people, like, I was struggling a bit and I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, is it okay if we talk on the phone, or can I send you this meme and like, can we talk, or things like that? Like, I think it's okay to like to
mm.
tell people that actually we need a bit more connection and we need that kind of interaction. But I absolutely feel how tricky it is when you, yeah, really want that and other people maybe aren't necessarily giving it back for sure.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's so true. Many times people would assume that we're okay because a lot of times, autistic individuals, a lot of my autistic friends would say that because they have stoic faces,
Mhm.
facial expressions sometimes, that they don't go like, yeah, I'm really sad. And like, it's not that emotional kind of reaction to things. It's just, even with the wrist and the breakup that I'm talking about, it could just be that we handle it according to social
Mm.
norms pretty well because we don't go on social media and say, look, my wrist is broken, or, I mean, you can if you want to, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, usually we kind of keep it all to ourselves. So maybe opening up and saying, look, I really do need your support. That could help. Like, just, and then we can also filter then, is this a good friend? Um, Okay, so then another question. Do other people struggle differentiating between friendships and acquaintances? That was a question by Steve. I don't know if you struggle with that or if you have any response to that, Lou.
Yeah, so for me, I really struggle. I don't always know like what the almost steps are for someone to be an acquaintance and someone to be a friend. Like I will assume maybe that someone's a friend when they think that they're an acquaintance, or I would assume that someone's an acquaintance and actually they think we're a friend, or things like that. I think can be really hard. I actually wrote a post about like the struggles as well of like that kind of differentiation. And one of the things that I found helpful was having almost a list of like, these are the things that make somebody like a friend, and this is like an acquaintance. Like, do we regularly see each other or speak to each other outside of like work or school? I had like a list of like different things like that to help almost distinguish. So I think having those kind of lists for ourselves of like, these are the questions of like, this is what makes someone an acquaintance and this is what makes somebody a friend, can also help. But I definitely do
Mm.
struggle.
I think also just like because Vicky was answering there as well, and somebody called, said like work bestie, and she was saying, oh, okay, that's just a colleague. And it is also what people say. And this is where it becomes tricky because people would say, a lot of people would say, oh, Carly is such a good friend, or you're a best friend, or something like that. And I'm like, well, we aren't because we don't ever speak and we don't communicate and we don't really have deep conversations. But people also just say stuff many times. So it is confusing. And I think having a list of saying, okay, these things I consider as being an acquaintance to me. And these qualities are being a good friend. And then, tearing it up, like you were
Mm,
saying earlier as well. That could help us being in control of determining which people are falling in which bracket.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely, definitely.
there were, sorry, were you saying something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing. Yeah.
Okay. There were a couple of questions if I scanned through. Fred and Sue, I think, were talking about. I find it a problem that for me, I become too intense within a friendship and end up losing friends because of it. Um, yeah, and then also Sue was saying, does anyone ever lose interest in an intense friendship? So and feel badly that you can't continue the friendship no matter what, how to deal with this. So two different questions, but the same intensity.
Yeah, definitely. I've almost described it sometimes as like people becoming special interests, a bit like have special
Exactly.
interests, but actually getting that kind of like friendship can become like a special interest where you're getting so absorbed and interested in what that
Mm.
kind of person is saying and how
They were
they
saying
are.
this too, yeah.
Yeah, like that kind of like intensity of
Mm.
a person being a special interest. And for me, like I used to really fight that and try and kind of like completely then sometimes cut myself off from that person because I find it's just too much. I don't want to have like I don't want to feel this intensely about friendship. I think now what helps is like being able to recognize that actually this is kind of what sometimes happens. Sometimes I'm able to like almost replace my focus and be able to focus on something else and like hyper focus on something else instead of kind
Mm.
of that interaction or friendship. I think that has really helped as well. And I think
Mm.
also recognizing that actually, like, there are other people around as well, like other people in my life that I'm friends with, like having that chance to reconnect with other friends as well can be helpful if you're like feeling quite intense in one friendship. Actually, taking that time to like touch base and like speak to other people, I think can be helpful.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love that because the risk that we run with that is, yes, okay, so maybe we do get hyperfixated on a person, and this is something that we often see. But then what if they disappoint us?
Mm,
And then it's massive. It's this person that we dedicated so much time and interest in, and now they just lied to us, for example. And it's like, what? Like, it just feels earth shattering then. But I think it's so good to say, okay, this person is cool. Like, I really do like them. We do fantasize a little bit about qualities sometimes. Like, I catch myself, and I have to catch myself, especially now that I'm single, going into a relationship and thinking, oh, they're so wonderful. And I'm like, oh, okay, just step it back a little
mm,
bit. It's that dopamine that I'm seeking, and I'm seeing all the great qualities in this person. And it's the same for friendships and any new hobby for that matter. But then we just need to kind of like
mm,
take a pause and do the same as that emotional overwhelm strategy that you were saying, is just kind of remove ourselves a little bit, expand our interest.
mm.
Maybe, I'm not saying dating like multiple people here, but each to their own, whatever. Okay. I'm gonna ask two more audience questions, and then I think I'm going to have to wrap up because I have just a couple of things that I wanted to say at the end. There is a question about masking, which I really wanted to get to. Where is it now? There's a colleague. Okay, so I found it a problem that sorry, here. What was the masking like when you got home from school? What was your emotions like when, this is probably when we spoke earlier about the school?
Yeah, so for me, I used to just feel so like overwhelmed. I think that was the biggest emotion. It was just like almost walking through the door, and as soon as I'd walk through the door, it was like being hit by this massive overwhelm, like that weight of that build up throughout the day. I think it would just be like an exhaustion and an overwhelm. So I think those were like the main emotions, but I just like it was like that sense of like being drained, and it was like
Mhm.
even if I was so desperate to do something and so excited to do something after school, I just couldn't because I had absolutely zero energy. Like it was just all completely gone
Mhm.
from all of that kind of intensity of masking. But it also meant I didn't know who I was because I felt like all day I was pretending to be somebody else. I was acting like other people, not like myself. So I was really kind of struggling to find who I was as well. So I think that really impacted it as well in terms of the overwhelm, that sort of emptiness, the exhaustion, all of those things. And I think it stopped people from becoming friends for me because they were becoming friends with me for somebody that I was acting as or how I was
Mhm.
masking. So it makes it quite complicated in terms of unpicking actually, am I kind of blocking some of my friendships because I'm struggling so much and having to mask those traits, but actually it's making things a bit more challenging in that kind of area as well.
Yeah, it's a good measurement
Mm,
tool actually. It's like, how tired are you? I'm still tired of from socializing with my neurodivergent friends, but I don't feel as different. I don't
Mhm.
feel like, oh, I've just played a role for 2 hours. Yeah, so we have so many other questions. We do have beautiful messages saying that they really connected well with you, and thank you so much for all your insights and everything. I just wanted to ask one more question. Sure, there's so many. I don't even know where to go. How do you follow or connect with you both, Carla and Lou? Lou, you're at neurodivergent_Lou, right,
Yeah,
on Instagram.
yeah,
Awesome, and that's probably the best to follow you from, hey?
yeah. That's the best. Yeah,
And then for me, I'm therapy.neurodivergent. I'm also on Caboose. So I'm on Caboose quite often. I'm the clinical lead there. So I do some videos. I'm actually behind with some of the videos. Steve said, thank you for your content, Lou. It's relatable and has been instrumental in helping me discover my authentic neurodivergent self. How do you recommend telling friends when you're late diagnosed, whether self or medical? I think this is also a very long question, and we're running out of time. Steve, I'm so sorry. Lou, you did answer this a little bit earlier when you said that maybe just the symptoms or the characteristics, rather.
yeah. No, I think that can be key. I also think showing people like films or TV shows or reading, like recommending books about with autistic characters, like those can always be really good to kind of start the conversation and start talking about autism with other people around you, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, and it's easier to then share that with the person. Say, hey, maybe watch this show.
Yeah.
And not always the same kind of shows because we're not always the good doctor type of autistic, we're maybe a little bit different. And then Colleen also said, hi Lou, big thanks for your content. Wondering if you feel your twin is a friend or is it different relationships? Feel your twin is a friend or is it different relationships, family? I'm not sure about that question.
Oh, I think, yeah, so I have a twin and I think it's asking, is my twin my friend or
Oh,
my family member?
okay.
I feel like both. I think she fills all the roles in terms of, yeah, we're so close in the sense that, yeah, we're really like friends and family and all those kind of different things. It's really nice
Oh,
actually.
that's awesome. Okay, last one because I didn't ask a question about from him. What do you recommend the steps need to be taken for connecting with a neurodivergent person? I think you did answer that, but one or two steps that you would say.
Yeah, I think getting to know like people's interests, I think is key. Like with my neurodivergent friends, we straight in there with like everyone's like special interests and things. I think that is absolutely key in kind of connecting with a neurodivergent person. And I also ask like generally other people, like, is there anything I can do that helps you or can accommodate you? I think that is always useful. And I ask the non-autistic people in my life that as well. I think it's like quite nice to know if there's something that I can do that helps someone else as well.
Yeah, I think it's always interest based. I don't want to push your time because I really respect your time. And I know that you are going to be exhausted after this because there were a lot of questions that were fired at you. And I'm sorry about the speed of them. But I really want to thank you. Everybody is saying thank you. And thank you for joining to the audience. It has been such a privilege to be able to be the one to interview you. I can put that now on my CV. Um, I just want to quickly wrap up. There's a reminder to our audience, and I would be fired if I don't say this part. The reminder to our audience that we have a range of divergent discussions coming up. We'll be talking to trans influencer The Goo Man about perimenopause and menopause in neurodivergent women. We've also got sessions coming up on sensory profiles. I'm taking that one. Navigating neurodiversity, entrepreneurship, stimming, plus many more being organized behind the scenes. So you can get those tickets if you head to our website and check out our app. Please download Caboose. Find us there. I'm there. Lou's there. We're all there. Lou, thank you so, so much for your time and everything that you've shared.
Thank you so much. It's been such an incredible conversation. I absolutely love chatting, and everyone's interactions in the comments are the kindest and so lovely. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been
It's
amazing.
so nice. Yeah, it's awesome to have everyone here. Okay, I'm just going to stop by, everyone.